video shortly after it was made, and I couldn't get over how beautiful and adorable she was. My heart broke for her because that was my life in a nutshell. My life started out as a happy kid. I was happy and I was always laughing. I loved being outside more than anything. My daddy was my hero. I had a bit of an attitude since day one. I climbed on things and did things my parents told me not to just because I got a kick out of making them mad. My mommy was my best friend. I thought I was funny from the beginning. I loved food, especially chocolate. I had a brother who was a little over 2.5 years older than me. I always came off as innocent, but I was a hard kid to handle. I was Daddy's little girl. I loved the beach more than anything in the world. I was an embarrassment from day one. I was happy, or so I thought. My parents started going through a divorce when I was around 11. 6th and 7th grade was filled with more bullying than I could ever imagine. I had only 2 good friends at the time. The word outcast began to fit my life more and more. By 8th grade, I was faking a smile almost every single day and trying to ignore how I felt. Behind the smile and the laughter was the beginning of what would seem like an eternity of suffering. My life began to spiral out of control and all I could do was watch it. I went through my days with a smile on my face and laughter coming out of my mouth, but I felt like I had no use in the world and I looked like this. Things were said and done between my parents and I that on some days I wish I could take back. I had a serious knee injury that kept me from the love of 3 sports, which was a large cause as to why I was so upset all the time. My teacher for 7th and 8th grade, of all people, made me feel horrible about myself on a daily basis. I was a failure, I never tried hard enough, and I wasn't going anywhere in life. Most of 8th grade was a blur. I tried to make the time pass as fast as I possibly could. Freshman year finally hit, and I couldn't figure out if I was excited or extremely upset that I had to deal with more people who would probably end up hating me. I was put on my first antidepressant, Zoloft, right in the middle of the school year. I started seeing my first counselor, who in the end only made things worse for me. The depression really started to sink in, and I felt like I was being judged anywhere and everywhere I went. Suicide never appealed to me until this time. No one knew how I was feeling. Only 2 of my good friends still knew. My immediate family knew, but I knew that they were having a hard time handling it. I felt like they were giving up on me because I was in such a dark place and I was negative all the time. I started binge eating almost every single day and gained the most weight I had ever put on. Toward the end of freshman year, I started going to a youth group at a church not too far from here. I immediately clicked with the youth group, and the youth pastor would soon become more important to me than anyone else in the world. I gave my life to God. For a few months, I started to feel like things were finally looking up because I finally found a group of people I was fitting in with. Summer hit, and everything came crashing down. I lost my best friend that I had ever had, and my reaction to the Zoloft started to show. One random summer night, I cut myself and tried to take my own life doing so. I obviously failed at the second one. I was taken off the Zoloft, and sophomore year rolled around, and I didn't think I could hate high school any more than I did then. My relationship with the youth pastor became stronger and stronger, and she was the big sister I could never have. But everyone at school was bringing me down faster than the youth group could build me up. People would throw food at me and say things to me that didn't even make any logical sense. I weighed 168 pounds from eating so much and 1 point higher on the BMI scale, and I would have been considered overweight for my age and my height. The word fat came out of people's mouths more times than I could count on a daily basis. I isolated myself and I pushed everyone away. My grades were slipping, and all I ever wanted to do was sleep for days on end. My relationship with my parents started to go downhill, and I constantly had an attitude and never wanted to talk to them. I don't really remember much from the summer after sophomore year. All I know is that I was dreading school more than ever once August rolled back around. I never hung out with anyone at school, and I was constantly in Miss Horrocks' room. I went from being 90% extroverted to 89% introverted. I went from always wanting to be out and about and around people to having horrible social anxiety. I went from never caring what anyone thought about me to having horrible anxiety about everything. I disliked everyone, including myself. I couldn't get over how fat I was, so I quit eating. I went from 168 to 135 in a matter of weeks. I was put back on another antidepressant, Wellbutrin. I was put on Abilify, a mood stabilizer, to help with the controlling of my emotions. I reacted negatively to that. I felt so incredibly tired every single day that I could not physically hold my body up, and I would fall asleep in the middle of class without wanting to or meaning to. Another mood stabilizer, Lexapro, was thrown at me, but it didn't do much. In October, my youth pastor was caught having an affair with one of the boys. Nothing had ever hit me so emotionally hard. I didn't know what to do with myself. Thoughts of taking my own life were constant throughout each day. I could never get rid of them or ignore them. Severe depression of 97 out of 100 started to set in. I was put on yet another mood stabilizer, Seroquel. I just wanted to be done having to try out different medications. I went back to binge eating. By March, I had so many things built up inside of me that I couldn't handle it anymore. On March 27th, I cut myself for the first time since the night I had done it a few summers before that. After that, I was addicted. I was cutting every single day. On most days, it was several times a day. Before school, after school, before bed. It got so bad there were a few times I had to refrain myself from doing it in the bathroom at school. It was the only way I knew how to control my emotions, and it was the only way I knew how to numb all the pain. I felt like I would never get out of the darkness. I never felt good enough for anyone. The majority of society taught me that no matter what pant size I was, and no matter what I looked like, I would never be good enough. It was amazing what my smile was hiding. I was trying to be happy, and I did a wonderful job at faking it. Everyone thought that I was such a happy person, and that I had it all together. But they never knew that I was breaking and dying on the inside. I never had it all together, and I was falling apart right in front of them, and they still couldn't see it. All I ever did was cry. Most of the time, I could never explain why I was even so sad. I was good at pretending things were good, but deep down, I hated everything about myself, the way I looked, the way I felt, the way I thought, even the way I slept, because at that time, it was supposed to be peaceful, but it was full of nightmares. I couldn't think clearly, and I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't find pleasure, delight, or any point in getting out of bed. I was becoming pathetic, and I knew it. I had zero faith that it would ever get better. I felt guilty and ashamed of my inability to deal with life as a regular person. I couldn't function, and the smallest things took the largest amount of energy I had in me. I was always the friend that was there for everyone, but I was left alone when I needed someone. It wasn't that I wanted to die, I just wanted to stop all the pain. I constantly felt like I was standing in the middle of a crowded room, screaming at the top of my lungs for someone to reach out and help me, but no one ever even looked up. It was hard to be told to stay strong when no one understood what it felt like to be so weak. I was lost inside of my own mind, and I couldn't find my way out. I tried my hardest to look good, but I still felt ugly no matter what. I hated myself so much that I had no idea how anyone else could ever like me. No one knew the real me. No one knew how many times I had cried in my room when no one was watching. No one knew how many times I had lost hope and how many times I had been let down. No one knew the thoughts that went on in my head when I was sad and how horrible they truly were. I could have tears streaming down my face and still manage to say that everything was okay. I was either so upset that I had to cut myself to relieve it, or I was so numb that I had to cut myself to get back here, but without facing reality. I was afraid of my own mind. All I ever saw were my flaws, which made me believe that they were all I was ever made up of. I liked the pain because I thought I deserved every bit of it. I never knew how to express how I felt to other people. Nothing ever made sense when I tried to say it out loud. People never understood. Every time I tried to tell them how I felt, words can never express how horrible it was, so they never truly understood how hard it was for me. Everyone thought I was overreacting. 3 days before school got out For the summer, the counselor here at school ordered me to go to the emergency room immediately for mental evaluation because she felt that my own life was in danger. It was only for a day, but it hit me hard. I knew I wouldn't be able to handle getting transferred and kept for evaluation for more than a day. I knew I had to do something to turn myself around and pick up the pieces. I had to figure out how to put the pieces back into place so I could finally be happy. At the beginning of this school year, I decided to start working on my social life, which surprisingly worked out well. However, the stress of being around people on a regular basis, the stress of school, and the stress at home caused me to stop eating again. I went from 148 pounds to 123 pounds in a matter of weeks. But surprisingly, the days between cutting started getting farther and farther apart. I was finally starting to see the light more than I ever had before. With the support of the people around me and my relationship with God, I finally began the road to recovery and healing. I've known what I wanted to do with my life since freshman year, but I never started making plans for it to happen until now. I began making plans with my life and what my hopes, dreams, passions, and goals were. The only thing that I had to keep in mind was this. I'm not completely happy today, but I'm still trying to find the meaning of that word. But I do have joy, and sometimes I feel like you can do a lot more with joy than you can with happiness. I've made the most progress right now than I ever have. I'm now 60 days clean from cutting. I went from looking like this to this standing right in front of you. My mood was much more positive than it is negative now. I'm getting much better at controlling my feelings and my emotions. I know I'm not here to preach to you, and I know a lot of you are not believers, but I can't stand here and not give the glory to God for Him helping me. My relationship with Him is the strongest it's ever been. The relationship with my parents has gotten much, much better. I'm starting to accept my flaws and loving myself for who God finally made me to be. I'm living proof that things do get better and that things will start to look up. But I'm also living proof that you have to go out and make that happen. You'll be in the dark hole that you're in right now for the rest of your life if you just sit there. You have to accept yourself for who you are and then improve on what you already are. For those of you who have no idea what it feels like, watch what you say. Everyone is guilty of bullying someone in some way, and everyone is guilty of judging everyone. Saying something hurtful to someone is the worst idea you could ever have. You have no idea if that person is going home and dwelling on what you said to them. You don't know if they go home to an abusive situation. You don't know if they go home to a family who doesn't care about them in any way. They already have all of the things built up inside of them. The littlest things that you say could set them off. How would you feel if someone took their own life and you knew that at some point in their life you had said something hurtful to them that could have possibly pushed them over the edge? Placing a judgment upon someone is probably the most immature thing that someone can do. We will never know everything about every single person, so there's no need to act like you know something about everyone. When you judge someone, it usually turns out that your judgment is completely wrong. There's someone completely different than who you thought they were. But no one is defined by their past mistakes. Everyone is more than all of them added together. You are more than the sum of your past mistakes and more than the choices that you've made. Suicide is 100% preventable, depression is 100% curable, and self-harm is 100% avoidable. Reach out to everyone because you never know who is hurting.